when they were when they were opening and removing the caskets and the bodies, you could see some of the bodies?
I could see many of the bodies, and the conditions of them varied. The best one I can remember right now is the one I was telling about, the brother's builder, the builder's brother, I should say, Samuel Preston, Dr. Samuel Preston Miller. He was buried in 25, and his body was almost perfectly intact except for the small bones like the hands and the feet.
This is the Miller family mausoleum somewhere near Independence, Missouri, on a back road. Found this by chance. So we're cruising down the road looking for the Minuteman nuclear missile launch facility, and I see this on the side of the road, so I had to pull in to find out what this was. It was so interesting looking. And just so happens, we're going to talk to the owner over here. His great-grandfather built this over 100 years ago. So he's going to tell us all about it and maybe let us peek inside. I don't know, but I'm excited to see what he's going to say about this. So
this is Carl Cranfield. I'm the owner of the mausoleum here, Miller Mausoleum. I got ownership 4 years ago. And a little context of the building is my great-granddad was the one that designed this, funded it, and built it himself. Took it 10 years to build it. He was retired in his 60s when he started and finished it in his 70s. And the reason he wanted to build this was, the main reason, he did not like when he was a young man, the fact that his family and relatives were buried in the muddy ground of Missouri. He said, I cannot think of myself being buried in the mud. So he said, I want to be above ground. He told his dad that. His dad said, well, that's great. Go ahead and I'll support you on that. But one thing, promise me that you will rebury your parents, me and your mom, in this place when you ever get it done. So they died before this was even started, and he did keep his promise to my great-great-grandparents to rebury them here. Their tombstone, where they were buried 4 miles up the road here, was brought down with them as a cornerstone of the building on what would that be, the southeast corner. It's a big gray marble stone, and he brought that down as a cornerstone of the thing. So with that context, let's bring you on inside the building.
Okay.
So we're coming on this other side over here.
What's the odds of this? We're just driving down the road and run into this guy and this beautiful building. And how many times you've driven down the road and you see things like this and you're like, I always wonder what it would look, what would it look like inside something like that? So this is like a once in a lifetime chance. So this is great.
All right, guys, you're welcome. Come in.
Yeah, it looks almost like a church at first.
Yeah, well, the second floor of this building was a museum. Only the downstairs 2 crypt rooms were, of course, the ones designed for burying people. It had 36 crypts in the big room, and the smaller crypt room built in the front of it, on the bottom floor, had 12 more crypts. Now, before we go in here, I want to duck your head because this is low. The family tradition and legend is he built this purposely low to make people duck their head to pay respect as they bow going in. So that's a theory we have as a family. So we'll duck your head.
Oh wow! So here's a casket.
Yeah, let's go into the historical.
Yeah, okay.
Here's the historical tour, and this casket right here is the first one I'd like to bring your attention to. This is my grandfather, Fred Miller here. He was the mayor of this town and the oldest child and son of the builder of the mausoleum. He was buried here in '63. And if you see what he has on his casket here is the symbolic wheat stalks. And they go all the way around it. And it was, of course, very pretty in '63. The roof being not kept up for 60 years, and no new roof. The roof is cracked. Water, acids from the cement in the ceiling through here scarred the marble and scarred this casket. So it's not as pretty as it was, of course, when it was new. I do know the company name of this was Meany Casket Company out of Iowa, and that company is still in business, and I've been told these were very high-end caskets that time, and they still make high-end caskets. But anyway, that's him with his wheat stalks, because he was a farmer. That's why we had these wheat stalks. Now, his wife is my grandmother. This is her. She's the last one buried in this place, and her name's Fern Miller. and she lived to be 100 years old and was buried here in 1982. So there's a big gap between him and 63 to 82, but this was her casket. I can tell you a lot of details about this when they took this one out. It had a really soft rubber casket to it. It's a very heavy one, and to unlock the steel bars that locked it down, you had to put a rod through that thing. Well, it was all rusted out, so they couldn't go in there and unlock it. So what they had to do is use hacksaws and went through several blades to cut through the steel. It's such strong, hard steel to just get that lid open. Wow. So that was a lot of work. But anyway, 82 casket. Her mother is 1927, was buried up here, Janie Haggard. And she died fairly young, and she had a good girlfriend, school friend that she had as a child. Grew up with that lady. That lady never married anybody. And when she was dying, she made her husband, that was buried right here, promise her that after she died, he would marry her best school friend.
Oh,
he
wow.
did that.
Wow.
He was a Baptist minister with that second wife in Kansas. And I'll show you this casket in a second, but I want to show you, this is his cover, George Haggard. And he was a barber for most of his life up to about 39 or 40 years of age. After 40, became the Baptist minister and had married this second lady, and they went all through Kansas and were preaching in that state. He died in that state originally with his second wife, while my grandmother over here already knew her mother was buried here, and she was planning to be buried here. She wanted her dad brought here. So she legally had the Dan Cass funeral home here, go to Kansas, bring her dad back, but left the stepmom in Kansas. She didn't care about the stepmom.
Oh, funny. Okay.
So anyway, he's brought here, and now that we brought you to here, I'd like to show you something interesting about how these marble covers are mounted. If you see these little emblems right here, they have bolts that you can unscrew, and when you unscrew them, you can put bolts like these bolts right here that can be used as a handle into those emblems. And so if you put those in there for handles, you can lift up these 50, 60-pound marble stones up here. Now, how do they get latched? I can show you my hand here can go behind this thing like that and go way over here. All these are like that. These marble stones are all behind on the edges with these slats right here, these vertical slats. They hold these up. So pretend this is a cover, and this is what we do with it. Got the handles here, you can move it to the side, clear the edge, or you can go the other way. It doesn't matter which side you go, you can clear it either way, and take these off, and that's how these marble covers get mounted up there with the slats. You can see they're really recessed on the sides, deep recessed.
That's smart.
Now this is a 1950 casket, but again it was reburied with, my grandmother wanted him reburied, so around the 70s or 80s, she had him brought here before she passed away, and so he got buried here. And so that's him. And see what else to tell you about that. That's about it for that one. So let's go ahead and put that back up there. And a couple other interesting things in this place was this is all beautiful marble. Again, it's been scarred from the acid from water from the roof coming down on it. It was all beautiful white marble at one time. This wall behind you, let's bring your attention to this. This had two religious paintings. This frame here is one of the original frames of one of the oil paintings. And that oil painting, some of the original fabric, vandals got on here years ago and destroyed both of those paintings. But we at least have that frame to show you the size of the oil painting. And on it, we do know it had heaven as a golden city up in the top, with angels looking down at the Garden of Eden at the bottom, with Adam and Eve in the garden looking up at the heaven, with the river Jordan going through the middle. That's what that one had. The other one that we don't have anything left of it was Mary holding baby Jesus in her arms. So that's what this one had. So that's why they had these recessed walls here. This back wall you're looking at is the first crypt room, smallest one, 12 crypts is all it had, and that's one the builders buried in. These walls in that room and this outside wall you look at here is 3 foot thick. The rest of these walls are 2 foot thick, but that's a thick wall, 3 foot thick walls. So, I want to tell you a couple other things interesting about this thing. This has a pipe ventilation system in it. And if you can do, I don't think you can go down here and see, you can see this pipe right here running through here, and it has a tee off.
Oh yeah.
There coming through that, right? And it keeps going on through, through these crypts. And why do they have that in there? There's a reason for that. The ventilation system. When you have bodies entombed, there's sometimes smells that come off it, maybe from the embalming fluid vapors, it could be from the bodies. Well, you want this an inviting place for the family to pay respects to their loved ones. Well, you don't want to have any smell. So these pipes all interconnect and go out to the back, low down on the wall in the back above the foundation. There's a little pipe you can see out there that these terminate with.
Oh, okay.
So that's what he did there. That's one of the things that the farmer is pretty neat. He learned to do that because he's a farmer when he designed this, which I think is amazing. Anyway, that's the last of the details in this one. We have other things I can tell you about in here. Most of these were sealed with a concrete. Actually, this is an unusual one. It had brick and concrete, double seal on that one. Most of them had concrete. And in fact, here, I can show you right down here, one of the seals here. That's what has the rebar they used back then was just kind of a wire, I think from a farmer fence wiring, I think is what it looks like to me. But they didn't have regular rebar back in those days, so that's what they used the rebar, that wire. So that's this room. So we're going to go upstairs, look at the smaller crypt room. The first one built, took him 1 year to build it. He started in 1917, finished that small room in 1918. In that room, the builder lost 6 of his 9 kids as babies in the 1880s from some epidemics, don't know which ones. And only one of them got a name because he lived up to 6 months old, Loren Basil Miller. The other 5 kids didn't even have a name, they're just infants. And all of them were reburied from the 1880s, where his parents were buried in Rock Springs up the road. They were brought down here too, and some of their monuments, their tombstones, were salvageable. They were buried into the wall here. So we'll pass those as we go and go. As we go up here, you see these some of the salvageable tombstones we had. The one that did have the name of the builder's children was this Loren B stood for Basil, Loren Basil Miller, and you can barely see it, but it is 1882 is when he was born in January, and he died in August of 1882. And he had, of course, the lamb with a head on it at one time. We lost the head on it. This is one of his other babies of the 6 that had I stood for Infant Miller, because again, no name for that baby. On the outside wall of this building, if you went outside in this corner, you see another tombstone back to back on this one that just says Infant Miller again. Now that's 3 of his 6 kids. One side of this room.
Oh, yeah.
And if you want to get another good shot of it, you see out that window. You come over here and look at this window and see how thick that is. That goes way out there. I mean, you can see that perspective.
Yeah.
But this room is the one that you built first. And when you're, like I said, he was anxious to build it because he's now, again, an old man when he's trying to build this whole thing. And he wanted to keep his promise to his dad. So he hurriedly, after he built this first room in 1 year, brought his parents down here right away. So let's talk about who's here. This right here is a solid copper casket. As it says right down here, solid copper. And this is one of the handles that came off originally, so I had to bolt it back on there a little bit as best I could, but that was on there. Solid copper. Inside is oxidized green, like you'd expect. And that's the builder, Joseph Miller is his name, the one that built this place. He died in 38. What else? I want to show you his handle. One of the handles is right up here on that ran on the left side here. Again, it was very beautiful at the time, but the ceiling being damaged for years, not well sealed. The water came from the roof and scarred all the caskets in this tomb. So anyway, it's kind of cool. Now, I like to contrast his casket with his wife's. If you see how cheap looking hers is, and not anywhere nice as his. Why is that? Historical reasons. He died in 38 before World War II. She died in World War II in 43. Okay, what's significant about that? World War II required all the metal for the war effort. In fact, metal was very scarce. All junk metal had to be recycled. So I'm thinking they were lucky to even get a metal casket. She only got a wood one. But they did do the copper trims over here. You can see the oxidized green on each sand. So they actually did some expensive. And copper was, of course, one of the rarest metals in World War II. As you know, that was good for at least electricity, if nothing else. I mean, it's good for a lot of things. So I'm thinking they were lucky to get that. So that's why hers isn't as good as his. They had to peel back her front here because if you saw inside, the casket was rusted out. The bottom's all gone, so they had to peel this back to take her remains out right through that opening. Now, I told you about the brother lost 3 kids. Well, first let me talk about the village kids. The village kids were all buried right down here in this corner. And we had a diagram. We have a diagram up here that shows you the location of people that were in the 12 crypts. See, a lot of them were empty. But the kids were buried here. The 6 children of Joseph Miller and his wife, Laura Miller. And then the builder, I just showed you his copper casket. I told about his wife was there. Now let's talk about his brother. They had the 3 babies also that died. So we had 9 babies buried in this room. What you have in there is remains of other caskets. Those are not the remains of the children caskets. They took all of those out and cremated them. But we'll get to that one too in just a minute, because there's some neat thing I want to share that. But let's get up here to show you how the babies were buried. These little cans were what they were reburied in. Lillian Fern, we have her stone. Elmer is her brother. Her other brother's up here. His name is Homer. I love those names, Homer, and they are all in that rack, side by side, there, up there. And being it was high enough up there, the dad's casket be buried right underneath him, okay? He was buried here in 1925. And his cover stone was, of course, this one here with all the names of, who was buried there. The dad was Dr. Samuel Preston Miller, died in 1925. Like I said, Lillian Fern, we just talked about, she died at only 1 year old, died in 87, and her brothers were down here. So that's what the cover stone for that crypt. Now, the other thing I want to bring to you real quick, we get to those in a minute too, is the parents. I told you they were reburied here. Now, the interesting about them was the builder, my great-granddad, made a mistake when he hurried to get his dad down here. If you notice, some of these others have threaded bolts sticking out of here, and that's how these are supposed to be mounted, with a nut on the end of these studs with the threads on them. His dad, he forgot to put those threaded studs in. So what does he do to get his dad's cover up here at the last minute? Plan B. What was that? He put blocks of wood, okay, big blocks of wood that he put in the corners, and only have a remnant of one of them. This is a remnant of one of the blocks of wood right here. You can see it has a thread on the end of it in wood. Again, it was a good piece of wood at the one time, and he had a kind of a wood dowel in the back of it to get it, cemented and firm into the hole he drilled. He did that in each corner with a threaded bolt, and then he could do the same thing he did with the other ones that he already had in. So he just screwed up on his dad on that end, but he fixed it, with that. Now the other thing he forgot was no handle on his dad's cover. All the other ones have, I think they're brass handles. All the other ones have brass handles except for dad's. So he screwed up 2 things on his dad. And then on his mother, he had another screw up on his mother. But before I talk about that, let me talk about his mother's casket. Her mother died in 1897. And she was buried down here. And you see that pile there? It looks kind of messy. Guess what? I have a nice photograph of what happened to it. Oh, there we go. I have a photograph of what that looked like before we tore into it. It's amazing. Look at how nice that is.
Wow.
That's her casket from 1897. That's what it was before me and the funeral home got in there. So that's hers. Now, what was the mistake that he did with his mother's? Well, it wasn't so much with the anything with the casket or anything, but her cover. He hired a stone cutter for it, and behind you guys behind you right here, you can see her cover stone. You can barely see her name and anything inscribed on it. Well, that was the stone cutter's first crack at it, when they just kind of scratched the surface for an outline, and then of course they're supposed to come back and cut the deep gouges so you don't have deep cuts like these do. Well, my grandfather or great-grandfather forgot to bring the stone cutter back to finish the job. So that's why you can't hardly read her name, but it is Margaret Miller there, Scritchfield Miller. And of course, that's a picture of her and her husband, the builder's parents, right there. And so that was her cover with the mistakes he did on her. So. This place is all in a mess too. My God, this is definitely not ready for.
Oh no, I love it.
It's not,
This is exactly how I like to see it.
okay.
Just raw and in its real form. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I want to tell you something. You just walked under something that's interesting, I think. It's this piece of steel right there. You see a piece of steel there?
Yeah.
And you guys come through here, so if you're away from the steps here, I'll talk about that and the rest of this. In those days, there was not common rebar. So what did he do for rebar? He got chunk steel from farms and anywhere else he could steal from. What you're looking at there, I forgot if it's a Model T or a Model A steering arm from the front suspension is what that piece is right there. With the end of it there as part of the steering system. An old Ford. I think that's kind of cool. Well, the rest of this is the same thing. He took pipes, he took steel vehicle frames, like this frame right here is from some vehicle.
Yeah. Wow.
That goes all the way through this thing, all the way back through here. Pipes going the other way. And so whatever you grab for rebar, you grabbed it and used it. What else? Well, this is the museum floor up here. This is all, had no bodies down here. This is all for the burial for a museum. Historical war facts from the Civil War. All stolen, gone. Way before I was even born. So anyway, I hear kids in this town that grew up here in the 40s and 50s used to roller skate up here occasionally. They bring their girls up here to scare them on Halloween nights. And they usually were, I think, respectable kids. I think it was like college kids and people from Kansas City came down here. It was the ones that really salvaged and damaged this place a lot, unfortunately. Reburied there. So they're all put together in the same area there.
This is quite a project you've been handling.
Oh, I tell you. Yeah, that's what one of the rooms looks like. If you can see how it looked before we got into it, unfortunately. You can see kind of how the quality of it there.
Yeah.
If you can there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I could go on some things. The other thing, I want to show you some of the pillars. This is the condition of the pillars I found. We had 4 of the 6 failing like that, in that shape and condition. There's another one in here somewhere.
Oh, is that an aerial shot?
Yeah, I'll show you that's the new roof on there. We had 4 layers. Each one had a color. That's not the final color. We had an orange color, and then we had this blue color. The final one was a gray color. So that's not the final roof color. But that's the aerial shot.
Look at this. 12 bags. Oh, wait, go back.
Oh, yeah, that's some of the trash from one day I picked up here from people who had parties out here. All that was beer cans. Doesn't count the wine bottles and other stuff I had to pick up out there. Yeah, this debris. I could go in. I wanted to show you the other pillar. Here's another copy of that pillar. Where's that pillar? Oh, this is a good shot of it, too. That's another, can you see that there? That's how it's crumbling. That's all support. The front end of this was about ready to collapse. And also the babies of the builder we found in his one crypt that had the 6 kids buried. This lid with 2 others similar with a cutout for a viewing glass in it. So they actually had viewing glass in the babies' caskets, at least 3 of the 6. And we had the glass to this one. The funeral home people grabbed this wood and the other wood too quick and put it in the crematory box. It got cremated, so I didn't save any of the wood, unfortunately. Only the picture, but I didn't save the glass.
Were you here when they were taking everything apart?
Yeah, I was
like,
right
did you
here.
see all the bodies and everything?
Yeah, I tried to document some of that process too, which I try to do a little slideshow on something and sell that, maybe raise a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, I documented. I was here it was a 2-month process because they only had a day or 2 a week available for this job because he had other work to do. So 2 months later, we had from the first one to the last one we moved out of here. So it's pretty extensive. So that's that stuff. This is the booklet that was the historical national register process I did that was approved by the federal government. It went through the state level first, and the package they put together hired a historical consultant to do this. And a lot of the research I did was what made this easy for them to do, by the way. And this is the family history book I did. It's over 200 pages on just the Miller line.
Wow.
I got to come back and do a documentary here. This is really this is too much for just 20 minutes of walking around.
Yeah.
This is like something that needs to be.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can come back. I'm gonna give you some business cards and contact information. These are some of the handles and stuff that came from the baby's caskets. This one here had the little baby lamb on it, which I think is kind of cool.
Oh,
you can see that on that one.
yeah.
And the other one I think is cool is this one here that had the words "our." You can't really see baby on it too well, but B-A-B-Y.
Oh.
Rosebud upside down. That stood for symbolically a youth's life cut short in the 1800s. That's what that upside down rosebud meant. So that's that. They used slide rules, I was telling here in the past. In the old days, they didn't use calculators to do math calculations.
Yeah.
These buildings, the engineers had to have calculations on angles and the steps and all of the calculation for the cubic yards and all. This could multiply, divide, square roots, divide, do logarithmic scales, trigonometry, cosines, all that stuff are on these scales, on these slide rules. Kids today wouldn't know what this is, but that's what they had to use to do their calculations on it. Something similar to this.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool? Okay, now that's done here. Why don't we walk that way and I'll meet you in the other room and show you a couple more interesting things in the other room, and it would be done with this tour for you.
Okay.
I'd like to go that way because there's interesting architecture that way. This is the boring way to come in.
Okay.
I'll meet you up there. You won't get lost, I promise.
Just go up the stairs?
If you want to, we can do that too if you have time.
Yeah.
But I have just a couple things I'd like to share in this room.
Okay.
This is the entrance room to the museum, and the stairs to it lead right from the highway, straight up here, bypassing the crypt rooms for people that didn't want to go through the crypt rooms. Now, what I want to share up here is you see this little pipe here with a bird nest in it? That's not the interesting part, but that pipe is the pipe for the potbelly stove that sat below it. Now, why would you need a potbelly stove in a mausoleum? People said to keep it warm for the tourists. Wrong. It was because of all this concrete. These walls are super thick. The ceiling's concrete. The floors are concrete. Takes years for this concrete to cure. Missouri is not friendly to concrete in the winter. As you probably know, it's too damn cold. It's freezing, sub-freezing weather down here. That's not good for the concrete curing. So what did he do? My great-granddaughter thought about having a potbelly stove up here to warm up this room, not for comfort for people, but just above freezing to keep the concrete from not curing right. And his farmhouse was right next door, so he was able to stoke it there in the winters for several years. So that's what he did up here. Isn't that kind of cool? So this is the only mausoleum I know that has a chimney. Upstairs, it goes up the ceiling. There's actually a chimney up on the top of this building. Isn't that cool? So that's what I want to share in this room. We all put the original new steel bars and new wood here. If you want to look at what an original door looks like, these are some of the original doors here. That one I think did go there. The other bigger one over here, that's behind it, was one that came down in the big crypt room when you came through it. That's what was on it. Not very secure, obviously, so we had to put better security here. This is what we did. So if you want to go upstairs, let's go upstairs. But I think it's kind of cool, thought of the heating the place.
Yeah.
Let's go on upstairs.
Okay.
Watch your step here. This is kind of dangerous. Just take your time.
Yeah, these are small steps.
Yeah. I think he miscalculated somewhere, or he ran out of money for the materials. I don't know which or both.
Patty wouldn't want to do this. Marty, wait till you see this.
Yeah. I'm sure if I did the calculation, it'd be so off, I wouldn't even have any room for the stairs up here. So, and of course this tower thing is called a cupola. And you can see the ceiling of it goes way up high. That's all concrete. And there's more parts there. People see some of this from the automobiles too. I can't identify what they are, but recycled steel from the farms and old vehicles. And anyway, this door's already open, so just watch your step here.
Okay.
And
Let me get a.
Don't get hooked up on.
Let me get a view of in here. Wow.
Those were not sealed originally. They actually had stained glass windows in those things back in the 20s or 30s. And kids with BB guns shot them all out. And what's your...
Oh, okay.
There. And you got a step, ledge there. This is the roof, the ceiling. You can feel that the slope of it is a 2-degree slope. That's because that was optimum, I've been told, angles for a roof to have runoff. If you have runoff that's any faster, it doesn't catch the debris with it. And if it's not, angled enough, it doesn't move any of the debris. So 2 degrees, and that's what this is. He designed that into it to flow the water to that back corner over there. So the other thing I was told that he sloped these called parapet walls, and they're sloped in, as you can see here. Why? Because he didn't want the rainwater to go off the side walls outside to stain the outside walls. So he wanted all the stains, if any, come in here. So anyway, that tower there was just an observation tower that people could climb up those steps. That the chimney I was telling you about is right there, sticking up there in that little square guy there. That's the chimney by the tower. And those stairs people use to go at you up there. I don't recommend people walk up there anymore for various reasons. But anyway,
I'll get some photos over here.
Just get a good view, I know, from up there when it was available. Anyway, yeah, that was the chimney to that potbelly stove inside. This new roof that you see up here, and that's about it for up here. And you can kind of see the lake a little bit in the back there. I'm trying to still open that up. It's still a lot of yard work to do there. But...
Like anything happened to you, or?
Not me personally. I'm not into that stuff to start with, so I'm kind of, maybe I'm not good for the spirits because I'm kind of a nay. Yeah. I'm not a denier of it. It's just that I have to show it to me and prove it. I haven't ever seen that happen. So.
What has anybody said?
Well, they said they've actually seen or heard something through here, and they captured it supposedly on video. I'm supposed to see a copy that I haven't seen it, but that's all I've seen. And I had a lady that's into spiritual stuff, and she's a real close friend of mine. She honestly said when she came in, she could feel the presence of my spirit, and it was communicating with some other spirit, chewing them out for something, saying, "You man, this and that." It was some kind of an argument going on, and that scared her. It's enough to leave the building. It was that intense to her, the communications going on.
Now, before this was built, was this property used for something else? Was it just...
At the time he bought it, I understand it was vacant.
Okay, so it was just.
Why'd he pick this spot?
property.
Like,
Well, he has 800 acres plus. He's a very wealthy man up in Pittsville. And being there's no railroad system up there and he wanted to bring a lot of materials to build this, he wanted to be close to the railroad system 1 mile from us. The town of Holden's right 1 mile away. Railroad system's right there. So he wanted to buy land that's close to that. And so he bought all this farmland down here from 3 private parties. This was one section for 15 acres. He bought another section for about 40 and the other one for about 100.
So it was 3 separate family properties that he bought.
But there was nothing on this property when he bought this guy. Remember the newspaper said he started building his own farmhouse on this property.
Okay.
And that was pasture lands in the back, and I think it's always been pasture lands. I don't think there was a structure next to this on the other side of it for time and equipment. Okay, you're
okay, so when they were opening and removing the caskets and the bodies, you could see some of the bodies?
I could see many of the bodies, and the conditions of them varied. The best one I can remember right now is the one I was telling about the brother's builder, the builder's brother, I should say, Samuel Preston, Dr. Samuel Preston Miller. He was buried in 25, and his body was almost perfectly intact except for the small bones like the hands and the feet. Otherwise, his body is perfect, and his suit that he's wearing, you can still see most of that on his body still in fairly good shape, which I thought was amazing for 1925. The children of the builder were just a mess. There was hardly any of their bone material, but they died in 1880, so what do you expect? And reburied here. My grandmother, I was told, her body was taken out at the funeral home, so I didn't see that personally, but they said her body was in mint condition because the casket they had was a high-end quality casket with good seals, and so when they took her out, she was still body with the skin, the whole body was there, the clothes, everything was perfect intact.
Skin was still on it?
Yeah.
Wow. What about your grandfather?
I don't remember them
You don't remember?
tell me about him, because he was also taken at the same time.
I got you.
Yeah, they took both of those at the same time because they had a hard time. His casket took about 6 guys to carry up because it's such a big, heavy-duty casket. It weighed like a tank.
Right.
And they took that one and my grandmother together, so I didn't see them. Well, the builder's wife, I remember hers taken out. A lot of them apparently in that tradition did not have clothes on, and apparently she was one of those that didn't have any clothes on. They could tell that right away, and apparently they were buried nude like that often.
Huh.
Apparently, that surprised me.
So they were embalmed back then, right?
They were embalmed.
And what did the skin look like? How did it look?
Well, hers didn't have the skin on it. Neither the one in 1925. I was talking about the skulls. The skeleton bones are intact. We had others, and hers again. I didn't see the skin because that was done at the funeral home. I don't.
Were their hands at any certain were they did they have their hands on their chest, or was it just kind of?
Most of these old bodies, typically all of them had their those fingers were not there. That's one of the things that deteriorate, I guess, faster because they're smaller bones.
Were they
The hip bones are there, the leg
position
bones.
Anyway, like just down, or their arms, were they down, or?
Let me think. The Preston Miller, his was all down. I just don't remember how the hands were. But this is another interesting thing. Was some of them, the husband was buried east to west, and her wife one way or the other. The wife was buried the alternate way. And I understand sometimes there's a significance of the way you're buried if you're religious. You want to be looking at the horizon for Jesus coming across the horizon. So some of them face him, I guess, to the east, I think it is. But so I thought it was odd that sometimes the husband and wife weren't facing the same way in the burial. But since they weren't buried at the same time, different people buried them. I could see them not check and think, well, how was the husband buried? So I thought that was interesting how they're not always consistent on the east-west burial.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably how he built this building for them all to be buried east to west because of that religious tradition, I think. If you notice that, they're not north to south.
Yeah.